Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about a fair bit of different things surrounding Zelda's 40th anniversary. And really it's surrounding two big things here. A lot of interesting little movie updates for the live-action movie that's coming out May of next year, 2027, which might have you wondering how does that have to do with the 40th anniversary? Well, I say that because, like the Mario Galaxy movie, Nintendo's likely going to promote the movie as part of anniversary celebrations, even though technically the anniversary is the year beforehand. It's going to be more like a big promotion campaign. That's the idea. So anyways, it is believed they're going to be telling us more and more about the movie throughout the year, and there have been some different tidbits coming out, some very interesting ones, which we're going to be getting into today. But then also, someone believes, Dr. 81, that he may have found the developer for the reported Ocarina of Time remake. I'm not sure I agree, but it's certainly an interesting conversation, and there's definitely some game being worked on here. So we're going to be talking about what that might be for today's discussion. Now before diving into it all, quick reminder here, I have this goal, so if you do find yourself enjoying my videos, subscribing would be very much appreciated, assuming you haven't already. So it looks like there's a logo going around that might have to do with the Zelda movie. So as you see here, here's the image shared, and Lando on Twitter suggested this might be our first look at the official logo for the movie. No, I do not think it's actually the official logo for the movie, but it might be based on something that's pretty important. And so what you see here is essentially the Breath of the Wild logo. You see the little flower, you see the destroyed Master Sword. This is the Breath of the Wild logo just with gold, and it says Stunt Department. I do believe this is probably coming from the stunt department because as you see here, Lando explains, the logo was found from a stunt crew member's story on Instagram for those wondering. It may very much be just a stand-in for now, considering it's literally the Breath of the Wild logo, until they actually put together an actual unique logo, but who knows. Yeah, I strongly doubt this is the actual logo for the Zelda movie because this is just the Breath of the Wild logo with gold. And instead of it saying Breath of the Wild, it's the stunt department. They put this together for the stunt department so they can have some sort of clothing, merchandising, or something to identify themselves or have something neat from the movie production. That's all this is. Reminder, a few days ago we talked about how Sony reported that the filming for the live-action Zelda movie has already been completed. That said, there are some other things going around about the movie that might be a bit more substantial. So, on IMDb, we've gotten a few really interesting updates. Now, reminder, there is a verification process for IMDb, but it's not 100% certain that these are the exact things, but it is perhaps a little bit more likely than just like a random post on Reddit. But anyways, here we have the plot supposedly for the movie. A live-action adaptation of the video game franchise, The Legend of Zelda, follows Link, a young warrior destined to protect the magical kingdom of Hyrule from the forces of darkness. The land is under threat from Ganon, a ruthless warlord seeking the Triforce, an ancient relic that supposedly grants limitless power. To stop him, Link must embark on a perilous journey, battling monstrous creatures, exploring treacherous dungeons, and solving complex puzzles to discover sacred artifacts that may aid him in his quest. So it's very basic, it's very traditional Zelda here, but is there anything in this that maybe can give us some clues about the direction of the movie? Well, I mean, I could say for one, obviously, if this is truly just the basic summary of the movie, then they're going for a very classic traditional Zelda, sure. But they do describe Ganon as a warlord, a ruthless warlord, which, you know, they could have maybe described him as the king of the Gerudo, or some sort of ancient wizard, or something like that, but no, they describe him as a ruthless warlord, so he's been warring around, causing havoc, ruining people's lives for some time, and it may be the case that in this story, in the actual setting, it's already established by the people that he's a bad dude. And I think this is worthy of note, because you take a look at, for example, Ocarina of Time. At first, while Princess Zelda absolutely suspected him of being an evil man, Ganondorf was getting along with the people of Hyrule. He was getting along with the king, and actually, technically, also in the events of Tears of the Kingdom in the past as well, even though there was suspicion there. Point is that there have been different stories centered around Ganondorf, where he's gone along with the royalty and the people, at least for a period of time. And this summary here doesn't have any suggestion to that. Now, something else neat that may seem extremely subtle, or maybe not even really a big deal, is how they describe the Kingdom of Hyrule as magical. Now, I'm sure a lot of people would agree that that's a good adjective for the world of Hyrule, but I would say that there are times where Hyrule isn't necessarily shown to be extremely magical, so perhaps if they're putting in an adjective like this, it's because they are definitely going to put a little more emphasis on the magic of the world of Hyrule. Overall, I don't think there's anything too crazy about this summary, but when I hear descriptions of Link exploring treacherous dungeons and solving complex puzzles, I do wonder how they're going to go about that to tell a proper film. These dynamics work really well for a video game, but in a movie, it would have to be handled a little bit differently. So I'm very curious how they're going to go about that, and I do think it's important to include these elements because that is a big part of the Zelda series: puzzle solving and treacherous dungeons. And yet, we still have a little bit more here. So, some of you may remember that there was some footage leaks for the filming on set for the Zelda movie. We got to see Link in a green tunic, we got to see Zelda in her blue garb, we got to see horses, and we got to see someone that appeared to be Impa. And this is all leaked footage, so it's not really up for too much debate there. Like, it was pretty clear that we saw the actual filming of this movie here, a little part of it. And many came to the conclusion that this character of Impa is actually being played by Deshen Lockman, and her IMDb has now been updated to include the Legend of Zelda movie. So that seems to further support the idea that she is indeed the person playing the role of Impa in the Zelda movie, and it's just cool to think that Impa's also going to be involved here. And as we've seen from the leaked footage, it looks like Impa is attending Zelda. They're on some sort of trek as a larger party. That's what we see in the scene. What that means exactly, hard to say. Maybe if there is this warlord Ganondorf attacking, invading all around, then they want to keep Princess Zelda mobile, so she's traveling alongside Impa to stay safe. Maybe they have their own objectives, but Zelda's moving in a larger party with people who are capable of battle and royal attendants. Which, you know, when we consider the setting for this film in New Zealand very much like Lord of the Rings, it definitely has you wondering if they're going to be going in a similar direction, where there will be a lot of battles that will be depicted perhaps in a somewhat similar fashion, which I think would be amazing. But that's all the movie stuff. Let's talk about what Doctor81 found. So Doctor81 was looking and found someone who's working with Tantalus Media. And as it said, the last game they worked on was Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which came out in 2024, and currently they are working on an unannounced project they cannot share information on, working hard with the team at Tantalus Media. All they say is that it's an unannounced project using C++ and a proprietary game engine. And Doctor81 thinks this might have to do with the Ocarina of Time remake, because Tantalus Media has a history of working with Nintendo, like Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, Twilight Princess HD, and Nintendo is known for their proprietary game engines, so he's left thinking that, a lot of other companies outside of Nintendo use some sort of established engine. Perhaps Tantalus is working on a proprietary engine to remaster or remake Ocarina of Time. Now, I do not think this is the developer for the Ocarina of Time remake, and there are several reasons why. The first one is that Tantalus Media does not have a history of doing ambitious full remakes here. Now, in fairness, if you look at what they've been working on over the years, they have not come out with anything since Luigi's Mansion 2 HD came out halfway through 2024, so it's been some time. And when you look, they had multiple games come out in 2024, several in 2023, several in 2022, several in 2021, several in 2020. So as you see, they've been coming out with many games per year, yet they have nothing so far for 2026, and they had nothing in 2025, or the second half of 2024, it looks like. And so that suggests that they've been working on something for some time that may be requiring a bit more resources here. So maybe from that perspective, you could see this and think, maybe they are working on something a bit more ambitious, a bit of a bigger deal, something that requires more hands on deck, more of a focused effort. That's why we haven't seen anything come out from them in the last year and a half. Perhaps there is something to that idea, but I still haven't seen anything from Tantalus Media that has me thinking they're going to be a key developer for what may be Nintendo's biggest, most substantial release of this year. Now, to be fair, we do not know the scope of the Ocarina of Time remake, but it's been reported as a full remake by Nate the Hate and Video Games Chronicle, and we've also heard from Special Nick that it's supposed to have a big budget, and that Nintendo's also planning to release a special Zelda Switch 2 edition alongside of it as well. And all that to me, in conjunction with the 40th anniversary, with the need of a big substantial game for the second half of this year for the holiday season, if these reports are true, it also means 3D Mario will not be coming out this year. To me, this all says they're working on something bigger. Never mind all the evidence we've been looking at over the last few years, which I also think suggests perhaps something bigger, such as the patents we've seen where Nintendo's been playing around with Navi as a cursor on screen to interact with the environment for a modern game. And Tantalus only has a history of working on remasters with Nintendo. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, a remaster. I'm not saying it's a really bad thing, but it's kind of a simple effort. It's more of an effort than we saw for Skyward Sword HD, another thing that Tantalus handled, which was a very basic effort. The same could be said for Twilight Princess HD. Yeah, they reworked the textures, but there wasn't that much effort. Now, Dr. 81 does bring up how there's a history of Tantalus wanting to do more, but that more has never happened. I don't think they have much history to show that they're going to be working on an ambitious remake. Of course, maybe the Ocarina of Time remake is not an ambitious remake, but that would go against some other things we've heard. What I will note, though, is that Tantalus has been working on a lot of different updates to Stellaris, and what I find interesting about this is when you look up what Stellaris is and what game engine it's running on, Stellaris is developed using the Clawswift's engine, an in-house engine created by Paradox Development Studios specifically for their grand strategy games, written in C++. And when we take a look, it's a proprietary game engine, an in-house engine, written in C++. So, if I'm just looking at the games that Tantalus has been working on, and we hear that someone's working on a game with Tantalus using a proprietary game engine written in C++, what is the game they've worked on the most? Look, Stellaris here, Stellaris here, Stellaris here, Stellaris here, 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 here. So I'm just kind of led to believe that they're probably not working on The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. I don't think this is what this is. There are so many other possibilities here. I'm not saying they can't be working with Nintendo, but Nintendo's not the only company they work with, clearly, if you look at their actual history here. So, while it's possible, I would not assume this to be the case. What we've heard is that this Ocarina of Time remake project is in the works by both internal Nintendo and collaboration with something external. Maybe it's Tantalus. I don't think they have the pedigree for it. I don't think their history suggests that. The other day, I entertained the possibility of From Software being involved, which I know a lot of people don't agree with the idea, and I'm not saying I believe that to be the case either. I just thought it was an interesting talking point considering the history of both series and what benefits talent at From Software could offer the Zelda series. And there are some interesting links that I do talk about in that video from a few days ago, if you're curious. Some people might bring up how Monolith Soft is likely involved, and I do think there's a really good chance because Monolith Soft is increasing their role with Zelda, but they're not an external developer. They are internal Nintendo, they are a part of Nintendo, they are a Nintendo developer. So, while there's a good chance they're helping out because their role is expanding with Zelda and they've done support work for a lot of recent Zelda games, they would only be a piece to the puzzle, not the full picture. So it's an interesting mystery, for now, about who is working on this unconfirmed big remake project, and we're not sure just how big it is. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care.